on the Newman Jets Audio Network. This is the Jetcast, the official podcast of Newman University Athletics, featuring exclusive interviews with coaches, players, administrators, and more. The Jetcast podcast is brought to you by South Central Ceiling and Paving, online at SCSEALING.com. Mel Hambledon Ford, Pepsi, Allstate Insurance Agent Mike Light, Eck Agency, Donlinger Construction, Big Corner Creative, Dr. Brennan Lucas and Advanced Orthopedic Associates, Keystone Solid Surfaces, and by Overland Charters, the official transportation provider of Newman University Athletics. Here's the voice of the Newman Jets, Blake Krebs.
Welcome into another Jetcast, everybody. Today we are wrapping up the basketball seasons. We'll have the men's and women's basketball coaches on. Also, the postseason is not over for all wrestling team members of the Jets team. They have got one team going to nationals. We'll be talking with him in just a few moments here on the Jetcast, episode number 37. Joining us up first, of course, Darin Spence, the head women's basketball coach, as the Jets wrapped up a 4-18 season just a couple of days ago. Coach Spence, thanks for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate being on. You don't really have to keep repeating the season record though, but it's a strange time for me for sure.
Yeah, I know obviously the season didn't go exactly to plan. Last weekend, close losses at Lincoln and Pittsburgh State, and I know that to wrap up the season, you were thrilled with the defense that you guys played, and you guys really battled in both of those games.
Yeah, we defended well pretty much the entire season. It's just the other side of it that we were really challenged, and it comes back to not putting the ball in the basket. And I think what was strange, spent the last couple of days just reflecting on our year, and I look back and and RJ talked a little bit about this, but when COVID hit our team, it was right before we were supposed to start playing games.
Right.
And so then we get shut down for 14 days, and I think we practiced for 3 days, 4, before we played Missouri Southern before our first game. And we never got back on track for the entire season. We never got back in good enough playing shape, and whether that's a heart issue, a lung issue, whatever it was, it just, looking back on it, it really messed with us moving forward. A lot of teams would play and then they got shut down, but they got in the rhythm of it. We couldn't get a scrimmage in, and with players having to step up to be shot makers this year and to be relied on, depended on, I think that had something to do mentally with us, not just physically. And as I go back and watch all our games, which I do all the time, something just wasn't right with our group this year.
It's really interesting that you say that, because that's something that Coach Allen has brought up, and I haven't necessarily talked to both of you about that thing. He said there were a couple of players on his team right there at the beginning of the season, because I think they may have had one extra quarantine than you guys had.
Right.
And he said there were some guys at that first time that were playing really, really well, but they came back and didn't really get back into that form until February. How, in a normal season, we take everything else out of it. How important is that time in, let's say, late September into October in order to get yourself ready for those games that normally start in November? They start a little later this year, but how critical is that time as you're trying to build your team and build your roster and figure out what pieces are going to fit best and what part of the puzzle?
Well, it's crucial because, as you said, if you have returning players that go year to year to year are supposed to be improving and moving forward and accepting a new role and thriving in the old role and then branching out into something more if they're a competitor. And so you need the time, you need the scrimmages, and for us, we just had a number of our, let's say, our senior class who we actually really depended on, and for them to adjust into different roles, for like Haley and Braxton, let's say, that needed to make shots for us, and they didn't get a chance to to do it in any kind of early games or scrimmages. And, Braxton missed the first couple games. Ashanti Day, she was playing right up until probably the week before we played with the hip injury. So as we were looking at our season, we were planning on her being there with Sydney to be that two-headed monster at the point. And as freshmen, they needed the time.
Right.
So, just a whole bunch of things that it's not. I believe there's reasons and excuses, and these are legitimate reasons that not just our team went through, but for us and where we were at, second year in the MIAA monster, we needed that time. But now at least we know where we're at and what we can move on to.
And what you guys are going to be moving on with, I would assume, would be continued zone defense. And Coach Crum had made the point to me when I asked her about it, because I said, it's still a little strange for me to see you playing so much man-to-man, so little man-to-man. But said, a lot of these players have kind of come in, and she made the point, most of these players have really only known you to be a zone coach, and you really played zone. So I guess that's just kind of your identity now. Maybe we ought to start calling you a zone coach now, because sixth in the league in scoring defense. You guys definitely made that a big part of your success this year that you did have, was the fact that you were able to slow teams down, and you mentioned trying to hold them a couple of baskets below their average, and you did that with a lot of teams, most of the teams that you played against this year.
Yeah, we did, and I'm not like 100% just sold on nothing but zone, because
right.
We went down to Central Oklahoma and played man-to-man, and sometimes our man looks like zone and our zone looks like man, which even confuses me at times. But we are good at it. We're really good at first shot field goal, defensive field goal percentage. We're challenged at second shot, and so
like all defenses.
Yeah, and it's not just a zone or man. It's the art of rebounding, and to get players to embrace that's what I have to do. And Bailey Hawkins did it early in the year, and then did it late in the year, and that was her role. And so, the zone, what it does was it gets players, it gets teams, to have to all of a sudden adjust to it. The thing, it doesn't allow them to run their stuff, and so it makes them have to adjust. And, good teams are going to figure it out. And what we got caught up with, because of the rescheduling of games, that I really think it hurt us in four games, was the Emporia State moving their games around. So where the team played them, then played us. So we're the only two zone teams.
Right.
So they got a chance to get it worked out.
Sure.
And we were the beneficiary of them getting it worked out sometimes. And so, but yeah, I like it. We didn't foul much.
No, you guys were in like the bottom. I think because I keep track of your national stats.
Yeah.
And for a lot of games, I can look back and see you guys were in about the 25th fewest fouling teams in the entire country.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been that way for a couple of years now.
Yes.
When we played man, and the biggest reason was, just this year especially, I look at it and I don't know what the real reason is, but we got slow this year. And we moved slow, and so our lateral footwork.
You're talking about in the half court or end to end or a combination?
More or less guarding the ball.
Okay.
Keep containing drives, and so that's why we pretty much went to the zone all last year, and then this year as well for the kids that we needed to play, especially when two of your more athletic kids, Ashanti and Elise, are out. But that's kind of, we had to figure out what's going to keep us in games. Defensively, we were in everything. We were right where we needed to be. And as I've always said, teams scored on our offense because of our live ball turnovers. But, to quote Coach Crum, I'd say, what did we get all this year in offense? And she'd say, wide open shots, which we did. You'll go back and look at us. We're shooting wide open shots, and so the question is: one, are you just not good shot makers, or two, you just got caught up in everything? And
sure,
and I think we had enough talent this year do a little bit more, and things kind of janky the whole year.
Well, you've mentioned how players have been able to make plays, early, late in the year. Not singling anybody out, but it seemed like there was multiple players that was the case for. They would have good games. Brooke Haney and Faith Mason-Vestal, they carried the water for you guys offensively the entire year and really played hard, and everybody played hard. But you've mentioned, player investment. And how do you think that player investment relates to the consistency that you've been talking about here as we've talked this morning about trying to get those things done, rebounding, defense, offense, not just at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, but throughout the year, because as you and I have talked about several times in the MIAA, there's not a night off that you have from Jefferson City to Kearney, Nebraska,
right.
down to Edmond. There's no place you can go in and say, well, that's an automatic win.
Well, kids hear you say investment and spend time in the gym, and it's the gun, the shooting machines are great, but they create this individual player. I tell our players, there was a couple years back where I outlawed the gun. I didn't let them use it because you need to bring in a teammate or two and work out. Because when I was playing, my teammates were our gun. We had a toss back that we would set underneath the net, and the ball would just bounce back. But when you have a gun you just go in there by yourself and there's really no accountability. It's just you by yourself. It's like the golfer at the range just smacking balls but can't play when he goes to the course. And so they think that spending time, our kids get confused of quality versus quantity,
Sure.
And Michaela Hayes got it figured out late, and she said, Coach, you're right. I only need to be in there like a half hour at a time, but do it consistently. And yes, and when Madison Birnbaum did that, she got so much better, and Faith got better. And so there is a direct correlation to you put the work in and you get some rewards. But nowadays kids want to say, hey coach, tell me if I'm going to play, then I'll go work. And that's just not the way it works. It's not the way I work.
Right.
It's not the way any successful coach is going to work. You need to prepare. In all this, in this social media crazed world, it's all about, stay ready so you don't have to get ready, all that garbage stuff. But there's some truth to that. You need to be invested and above and beyond, because the NCAA only gives us 20 hours with our players. And anything outside of that with coaches counts, and so if we're doing individual work, it counts, on their time. And so kids have to be able to step up and be invested, and then it really kind of means more.
How challenging is this off season going to be, just with, how little you were able to get done in terms of working with the players for the reasons that you specified, the senior situation because of the coronavirus, not knowing exactly who's coming back. You've got your incoming class that you've already signed, and obviously you've got some really important returners that are going to be coming back. So it just seems like with that, the pandemic is still going on. Is this maybe not just for Newman, this wouldn't be a Newman-specific thing, but it seems like for a lot of teams, this would be one of the more challenging off seasons as they try to blend everything together for the 2021-2022 season.
Yeah, no question. And before all that, my first thing is to get Coach Clarissa Crum, to take time and get away, because especially when you think about, we lost Cameron Cates, our GA.
Yeah.
Before the season started as well. So
your
now,
time and the mental break, the next thing on my card for both you guys.
And so she did all our social media posts, all the statistical posts, all the meals and hotels and did it all, and it beat her up this year, and it's not. She's been dealing with the loss of her sister for 2 years now, that she hasn't really had the time to go grieve. And I told her, I don't want to see you for a while. Go take you time, because when she's not right, I know, and that's not right put her through that. You know,
Sure.
and I think our players really take her for granted for all that she does, from academics to just an individual relationship building. And I think that was a hard thing this year, that, you know, the older players just kind of took her for granted, like, oh, she'll be there. And I flat out told them, you know, I'd like to get her moved on to a bigger level, because she's that good. Mm-hmm. And if she wants to continue coaching or into an SWA position, you know, somewhere. But yeah, I want to get her taken care of. But with our players, yeah, I mean, we got to figure out what we can do. And, you know, we've got all these sports now playing in the spring, which wouldn't be playing in the spring. So now here we're got to figure out our coaches, our game management responsibilities, and who we're supposed to babysit. We still have to be recruiting. JUCO games are playing into the spring, so it's much different again. But it's kind of exciting too to go, you know, figure it out. We're going to give our players more time off from basketball with us than we ever have before. I want them to get to where they want to be there. But what we're going to do after our 2-week mandatory break is Hayden Jones, our strength coach, is going to just absolutely get in the middle of all of them. And we've discussed it a little bit in the plan, and I'm tired of getting beat up physically in this league. And so whether that starts mentally, you know, which I think it does a lot of, because our kids, we have good-sized kids. We're not a small team.
Sure.
But a lot of times it's the size of the fight in the dog, you know, not the size of the dog in the fight.
Right.
And so we've got to create a little bit more of that. And they're all his for a good stretch now.
Well, that might not be so enjoyable, but that's the price that you pay.
And I don't want it to be. I want
sure
them struggling big time.
Well, one thing I did want to ask, and something we don't talk about, you know, you recruit these kids and you recruit these families too. Yeah. And we already know, you've already said that Haley Alber's not going to be among the returners, been accepted into medical school, University of Kansas. Big thumbs up from me on that one, obviously. But so I did want to ask, you've got this new class coming in. When you lose Haley, you lose Grandma Jean. So do you have a replacement for the unofficial team photographer, Grandma Jean?
Wow, you talk about. I told her, I said, you talk about the real MVP for us, and not just and 4 years worth of pictures now.
Fantastic
memories,
job on the road.
Experiences caught in pictures, and not just for us. She started doing it for our men's team.
I know she
for
did.
The cheer squad. She's really, really good. Maybe we can, I don't know, finagle something to get her back over here next year. But yeah, I mean, you just so many things you take for granted. Like, and yes, and we have really good families, which is why we wanted to recruit our region, our state. And I know for Braxton's family and Haley's family that were there all the time. Yeah, I know this last year was frustrating for them too. I could see it on their faces, but I sure, it's not like we woke up and let's see how bad we can be to the kids. It just the way things worked out, and they've been very supportive, over the 4 years, and I hope they're actually really appreciative of the opportunity that we and this university afforded them with pretty big scholarship to get their degree. And so, yeah, we're Haley's, I'll be I would love to have Haley as my doctor. She might take a couple extra shots on my knees.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, we've got really good people, and whatever they choose to go do from here on out, they'll be special, and they'll be good at it for sure.
Your last question, Coach. I know that you've already got it all signed up. Nobody else left to sign unless something's changed. But you're bringing in the class of 2025 for the Jets. And so your final thoughts as we kind of put this aside, and I'm sure I'll have a couple questions as we open up things next year. But I know you're really excited about this group of freshmen that you have coming in, and obviously you've kind of added to that, not by choice, but Elise Kaiser and Ashanti Day, they're going to be added to this class of 2025 now.
Yeah, so that makes it a class of 7, right now, but all have ability. We've got more size and length coming in. Our 2 in Texas have just received their all-district honors and got beat like in the 3rd round of their state tournament. Liberal High School in St. John's, Tipton, where our kids are, and Nemaha. They've changed the name so many times, that school, Nemaha Central.
Yeah, Central Thunder, I believe.
Which I think they're top 3 in the, Liberal, Nemaha Central, and St. John's, Tipton are all in the top 4 of their class, top 5, and could have a good run at the state tournament. But yeah, we're excited they're all energy givers. And they're not passive people, and so they're going to come in here with the idea of we're going to go to work and we want to do well. We want to help your program rise. And recruiting is always the lifeblood of a college program, and then it's just a matter of where we go next. Do we add anybody else? With women's basketball in college, it's darn near impossible to carry more than 14 on a roster. So these other places that are carrying, 15, 16, the schools that make them go get 20, 22, that's just ridiculous if you're not having a JV team. But even then, it'll come back to bite you in the backside because they all want to play. They all expect to play. We'll play 10 every night, but for me, 12 is the most ideal number. We go to 14 because there's always the injury factor that's coming up. But I like the group that we have coming in, and we'll see what our group returning looks like as we move on through the spring.
Plenty of reasons to be excited for Jets women's basketball in 2021 and 2022. Like I've said many times, we ask a lot of Coach R.J. Allen and Coach Darin Spence in terms of pregame, postgame, calling them on the road this year and coming down here for this. So, Coach, again, thanks so much for the access. Thanks so much for the time. And do take some time for the Olding ball coach as well in the offseason.
Yeah, and year 9 here at Newman, starting year 10, starting year 37. Still 6 wins shy of that 600 number. So we'll have to do that next year. But a lot of craziness this year. But we made it through. We weren't as good as what we wanted to be. And so we'll just keep working and stay at it.
Darin Spence, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
R.J. Allen will wrap up the men's basketball season when we come back on the Jetcast.
Hi, I'm Alex Stevenson with South Central Sealing and Paving. We specialize in parking lot maintenance. We do asphalt repair, crack seal, seal coat, slurry seal, concrete repair, striping. Heck, I'll do anything for money. My dignity can be bought. Do property management, trash pickup, snow removal. My kids gotta eat. And hey, if you need any carpet or anything like that, call my dad, Jeff Stevenson, at Harry Street Carpet. You tell him I look better than him on camera, he'll give you a 20% discount. We're South Central Sealing. Let us fill the cracks in your asphalt.
Continuing here on the Jetcast, wrapping up the basketball seasons, talking men's basketball now. The men's basketball team won their last game of the year at Pittsburgh State. They end the year 4-18. And joining me is the head men's basketball coach to wrap things up, R.J. Allen. And Coach, obviously the season, as we've talked about, didn't go the way that you wanted it to this year. But how nice was it for you to see the guys come around and win one of those tight ball games, another one of those tight ball games on the road? And I know that sending them out with that win on the road at Pittsburgh State was a nice way to end the season and try to generate some momentum going into this offseason.
Yeah, you definitely want to try to generate some momentum going into the offseason. It was just a testament to those guys of just being able to kind of withstand the ups and downs of a season, continuing to try to compete the best they can and continue to execute what we've been telling them as a whole. So, you seeing it all kind of come to at the end of the season, was definitely a good sight to see.
Character building, something you've talked about a lot, and it's something that you hope that you guys take away from this year is trying to go through adversity. You've used that word a lot this season as we have talked. How do you feel like that has gone? Because, not just the wins and losses, that would be a challenge for any team, but when you throw everything else that's happening outside this room in the world onto them, it made for a really challenging year because of the pandemic and so many other issues that we wouldn't even have time to get into fully. But these guys had a lot on their plate, and they're just young men, and it was a challenge in many ways this year.
Yeah, it was definitely. I think it was our last home game. I told those guys that they'll probably learn more from this year than they would, any other year in athletics. Just kind of the adversities, the ups and downs, the, falling short, the disappointments, night in, night out, and still having to get back on that horse, to get back up every single day, to challenge yourself to be the best person, teammate, basketball player that you can be at the end of the day. So, for those guys, I felt like they responded well, and they took our message and they tried to do everything within their abilities possible to keep climbing and keep working and keep getting better.
And it's not like, people can look at the final record and think whatever they want, but if you actually came out and you watched the games, and I know a lot of you were not able to come and watch the games because of, the pandemic and all those things, and hopefully you'll all be back next year. But if you listened to us, if you watched on the MIAA network and watched this team, Coach, I don't feel like you guys were really that far away. There are 11 times, at least by my count, it was a 2-possession game in the final minute, and there were several of those where, you just don't get a bounce, and if, it could have been a wildly different season if the opposing team doesn't make a couple of shots. If you make a couple of other shots, it's a totally different discussion what we're having.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the gift and the curse of athletics. A lot of times you are right there and you're so close. And for us, we were really close at a lot of times. And, we go back and we reassess the season after the last game, and Quay and Tracy Jones played a huge part of that. And we had neither of those guys. We just got Tracy Jones in February. Quay wasn't with us until after Christmas. So it was, you have a lot to kind of overcome. And a team like ours with 11 new players in a shortened season, your margin of error is so small. And when you are missing a couple guys or you got some guys banged up, that can definitely affect how you go about your business.
It's something that I thought was really interesting just before you came in. I think he said he had talked to you about it, but Coach Spence had said something to me on here that we hadn't really talked about outside of this, but something that you've mentioned a lot was the early coronavirus quarantines that you guys had before the season. And this is something that you've brought up as being, not necessarily, and he wanted to make sure, it's not an excuse, but it's a reason, why maybe things didn't get off to the start that you wanted, because you had those early coronavirus quarantines, and you had one extra one than even the women's team did. And you had mentioned, there were a couple of players that just didn't quite come out of that looking the way that they did going in. And you said you felt like there were a lot of guys playing really, really well before you had those quarantines. So I'll ask you the same question I asked Coach Spence. In a normal year without any of this stuff going on outside that you don't have any control over, how important is that time in late September and there into October as you get set for what's normally a November 1 start in terms of trying to figure out how you're going to put the team together for the 40 minutes and put guys in the right role and the best role to help you guys win games? For us in this league, vital. Just for many aspects. The real side of it is, we don't, unlike a lot of other teams in the league, we don't get to
get these guys in the summer.
Right.
So a lot of times these kids, when they show up on campus in late August, early September, this is the first time we get our hands on them. So, when you have that time kind of cut down, and everybody went through it, it really affects a team like us. And then they're all new, and you don't have any preseason or any scrimmages or anything like that. So, like, literally the first time we had an opportunity to kind of see guys and play against someone other than ourselves was an actual league game.
Right.
And then you throw in the MIAA is one of the best leagues in the country. It's like,
and it happened to be top 25 Missouri Southern.
Yeah, it's just one of those deals. But it's just kind of the luck of the draw, and you got to try to maneuver around it and put those guys in a situation where they can be successful.
Well, that's something else that you've talked about, the fact that keeping guys on campus is such a cornerstone of so many other MIAA programs. What do you feel like the benefits would be of keeping guys around on campus more to try to work with them over the summer?
I think it helps, for one, builds a culture and a camaraderie of guys where they are together, almost year round, and they're working and they're building relationships. And, when you get to a December game and it's the last minute of the game, like, their culture, the relationships that they built, the habits that they've built all the way back in June, come into play at that point of time. So, it's not just, hey, we hope the ball goes in. It's like it's more than that. It's a culture. It's a belief system because of the work together that they've put in. Really makes a difference. And that's hopefully an area we can get to in the future. But I do feel like that's one of the things that some of those other schools are able to do.
You mentioned, the adversity and the learning experiences that you've had this year. You've had a lot of new players that have come in, and, like every year that you've been a head coach, now that I think about it, you've been able to get guys to come in, no matter how you've recruited them. They be freshmen. A lot of these guys have been transfers, but you've been able to find guys that have made an impact on the first year, from the first game that they step on campus. How excited are you that so many of the new players that you did bring in this year not just stepped in and played roles for you, they were kind of mainstays for you and really important pieces. And I know that the longer you can keep these guys in the program with this give back year, obviously just a chance to develop them even more. And a lot of those guys came in and they were big time for you this year.
Yeah, it's it's nice to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're going through all these tough losses, that these guys will be back. Mm-hmm. and a lot of them have multiple years, and they're learning. The greatest teachers experience, so they kind of know now what to expect. It's completely different when you're in that recruiting process and you're trying to, kind of fill them in on what they're going to see and how good the league is night in, night out, and they've seen that now, mm-hmm. and that's all they've seen, So I'm really excited about what's ahead for a lot of these guys, and we want to keep this group together as long as we can.
How does the offseason look for you this year? It seemed, I said the same thing to Coach Allen, or to Coach Spence, I should say, that this would seem to be a uniquely challenging offseason because you've got the coronavirus that's still going on, this pandemic that you're still having to deal with. You've got seniors that aren't necessarily not coming back, but something that you're going to be looking at here in the next few weeks in terms of deciding who's how that's going to all play out. The guys you've got coming back, recruiting that you've already done, trying to piece everything together. How challenging is that aspect of it going to be, just trying to blend everything together for the 2021-2022 year?
Yeah, that's the kind of fun part about it for me. It's like putting a puzzle together,
sure.
Piece by piece, and just trying to, as a staff, we sit back and try to, find the right pieces for this group and put guys in the right situation and add what we feel like we need to add and just go from there. So I really enjoy that part of being a coach, and I know our coaches, we meet daily on just kind of avenues and directions that we want to go and what we feel like would be best for our group and our team, and then we attack it that way in the recruiting aspect, and we just go from there. And then the skill development and weight training side, for a lot of guys is going to be very pivotal this off season. So there's a lot of factors that goes into it, but again, like I said, I really enjoy that.
Coach Spence had talked about how they're going to, on the women's side, they're going to give their players a couple weeks off and then go back in. And he said it may not be a fun spring for the ladies, is kind of what he insinuated in terms of getting into the weight room and getting that going. And I know that you had mentioned to me that there have been a couple of guys off of the team that have come to you and said, hey, in the off season, I need to work on myself and my physicality and my conditioning so that I can, be a better player for you next year, just because of how demanding the league is. How are you excited to see some of those guys who are so eager to put in that work in the off season to try to help them get started?
Well, I think that's just the learning process and the character building that they've went through this year, just really understanding and being able to look themselves in the mirror and truly assess where they have to improve as basketball players at this level. So, yeah, this spring is going to be pivotal. Those guys they're gonna have to get after it, and it's just not the spring. Like, as far as the weight training aspect goes, as hard as you work, if you take time off or a significant amount of time off, and you're not being pushed or holding yourself accountable, you can lose it as well. So it's going to be something that these guys are going to have to really get serious about and kind of take it to the next level.
Final question for you. You mentioned taking time off. You don't want to take too much off, but I'm guessing that you probably need a little time off and a little mental break as well, and probably your coaching staff too. So what are you looking forward to the most in this offseason as you try to rest and get refreshed and reset and then come back to attack the 2021-2022 year and recruiting and all those things that you have in the offseason you're looking forward to taking care of? Sure.
I mean, it never stops, but again, I think you have to find a balance as far as that goes. And I just look forward to Little League Baseball now.
I was about to say, baseball.
I got my boys playing, and they'll get cranked up here, and I enjoy following them and watching them over the summer and just kind of catching up, being dad, and going from there.
What are you expecting to see out of young Allen's baseball team this year?
We'll see. I couldn't tell you. It's I got an 11-year-old and then a 5-year-old, so we'll see.
Are they both playing?
They are, and it's crazy. They've been practicing a little bit. So mom is she's happy that I don't have Thursday night games, so I can haul some boys around the practice.
Sure, absolutely. What position's the 11-year-old playing?
He plays shortstop. And he pitches a little bit. So it's just starting to get a little bit more competitive now. So we'll see how that goes.
That's about the age.
Yep.
Leadership qualities there, shortstop from the head coach. R.J. Allen, the head coach of men's basketball. Again, like I said with Coach Spence, nobody is asked more of in terms of our coverage than men's and women's basketball. So again, Coach, thanks so much for everything and the access, and hopefully next year we'll have everything a little bit more back to normal with fans coming in and the road games. But we appreciate everything that you did to make what we do possible this year. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all that you do as well.
We look forward to having you in the off season. And up next, wrestling is not quite in the off-season. Kameron Frame is going to try to become a 3-time All-American, making the NCAA Division II National Tournament. We'll talk with him next on the Jetcast.
Fact is, every insurance company hopes you drive safely. But Allstate actually helps you drive safely with DriveWise. It lets you know when you go too fast and brake too hard, with feedback to help you drive safer, giving you the power to actually lower your cost. Unfortunately, you can't do anything about that. Now that you know the truth, are you in good hands?
Check out your Allstate agent here in Wichita, Mike Light, at 316-684-0121. Thank you to Donlinger Construction, proud supporter of Newman Athletics. The Jetcast is sponsored by Dr. Brendan Lucas with Advanced Orthopedics, the official orthopedic surgeon of Newman Athletics.
Focusing on all the winter sports today, and not all of them have completely wrapped up. We've still got wrestling going on, and the one guy that you see next to me now, if you're watching the show on YouTube or perhaps on Facebook, is the wrestler headed to the national tournament, Kameron Frame, a redshirt junior from Wichita, a transfer from Wyoming at 165 pounds, has made his third straight NCAA national tournament appearance after finishing second at Super Regionals this past weekend. Kameron Frame back on the Jetcast. I believe that you are actually the first return student athlete guest on the Jetcast, so you'll have that for forever. I know you're always going to remember that.
Really, I didn't even know that.
There you go.
Learn something new every day.
For first time, so you've got a big history for you here made today. Thanks again for coming back. How does it feel to make it back to nationals? I know that last year having it kind of ripped away from you was really gut-wrenching. How much more of an accomplishment does it feel like this year to be able to make it back after having it taken away?
It's definitely a huge relief. I mean, I get a shot at redemption for last year's season that didn't go as anyone planned. I mean, I still got named All-American, and but I didn't get to compete. It's not the same, so I'm glad to be back.
Obviously, you guys, you got off to a good start in your Super Regional with a bye, and then you get a fall in your first match against Ouachita Baptist. What went right for you in that match?
I just got to my stuff right away and ended up getting a quick pin. I felt pretty good that match, and it was a good way to start the tournament.
So the next match, this was your one defeat, a loss in the semis, 4-3, and obviously in wrestling, when you get to this level, at least for when I remember watching Noel Torres on his run to the national championship, boy, it seems like the points at that part of the sport into the postseason are just so precious. Every time you can get two, every time you can get one. You lost in the semis by one. The difference is so close. In your mind, what was the difference for you in that match that prevented you from coming out on top?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, we actually had a couple calls not go our way. I was actually awarded 2 before the end of that match, and then it was taken away from me. So I actually had the lead 5-4, but things happen, and I just had to bounce back and come through the backside of the bracket.
Well, and that you did. So resetting, obviously, if you feel like that you've gotten a call against you that is a bad call or an unfair call, that's tough enough on its own. But when you have to restart and kind of reset mentally in that consolation bracket, what do you feel is the key to doing that? Obviously, if you're on the winner's bracket side, you're confident, you just keep winning. How do you try to reset yourself when you get into that consolation bracket, and do you approach those matches any differently?
It's definitely challenging to bounce back from a loss. I mean, everyone hangs their head on certain things, but you just can't do that in a tournament like our Super Regional. It's so short, the time span that we have between one match and the next, so just immediately have to start thinking about the next match and what I can do moving forward. I can't hang my head on the past.
How much time do you normally have in between matches?
It's required 30 minutes, but it can be 30 minutes to an hour, hour and a half. You never really know, especially with this year, the COVID year. They kept taking breaks to clean the mats. It was different.
Do you like having the shorter breaks? Obviously, wrestling is, it's not a long match that you're in, but it's usually very intense. It's only 4 to 6 minutes, depending on how long it lasts, but it's a very, very intense 6 minutes where you're putting out, a lot of times max effort for the whole 6 minutes. Do you like having more time off, or do you feel like, the shorter time, maybe that gives you an advantage because of your superior conditioning?
I think it just depends on the scenario, I guess you could say. Some I would like a longer break, and some I would like a shorter break.
Right. 14-3, you won the second place match against Central Oklahoma. Obviously, that had to feel really great to really punctuate your ticket to nationals.
Oh, that one was actually the third place match.
That was the third place match, correct.
Yeah, that was a good one. It's a guy I grew up wrestling around and being around the same weight, so it was a good win on that one.
So you guys, you get through to the second place match. You win that one. And so now you're headed back to nationals. How do you feel like experience from your previous trips is going to help you in this trip to nationals?
I guess you could say I'm prepared for anything, whether the tournament gets canceled or we have the tournament. So that's a good thing. And I mean, I'm not as nervous, I would say. I've been there. I know what I need to do, and I'm looking forward to it.
So you've got a couple of weeks off here before you go. It's March 12th and 13th is when the events are going to be, and Colin will have everything up, newmanjets.com. If you want to follow along, they normally have some sort of video coverage. I'm not sure if it's free or not, but that's all available, and that'll all be linked to you, so you can follow that at newmanjets.com, and I know they'll have it blasted all over social media as well. During this time, especially this week, obviously next week is kind of event week, how do you prepare? What are the things that you feel like you need to do to give yourself the best chance to win?
I would just say keep my normal routine. I mean, stick to what we've been doing. We've had a game plan from the beginning of the season, and we're going to stick to it. I mean, the whole point of our season and how our coaches lay it out is that we want to peak at nationals. We don't want to peak mid-season. We want to peak at nationals, and that's what we plan on doing.
So normally in wrestling, you are not, most of the time, each school probably has one, maybe two guys at a particular weight class. So you're normally wrestling either up a weight or down a weight. And last year you had somebody else to wrestle with who was also going to nationals. How does that work this year? Do you kind of recruit somebody else off the team to come in and train with you since you're the only qualifier this year? Obviously the full team doesn't have to practice. I'm sure you guys are still working on stuff to get ready for 2021, 2022, but how will that look for you this year as the lone qualifier?
Yeah, so we'll bring in a few of the guys that I've been practicing with all season, and like I said, we're just going to try and stick to what we've been doing. And how it'll probably go is I'll probably have 3 or 4 teammates in there, and they'll just rotate on me, so they can really beat up on me.
Yeah.
So they stay fresh while I'm dying.
So what you're saying is this is not going to be necessarily an easy week for you.
No, definitely not.
So how will that change next week? Obviously, this week you can kind of put in the pain, put in the hours, put in the time, and then next week, obviously, it's all going to be about trying to relax, rest, recuperate, but at the same time, you've still got to maintain that weight. Yeah,
well, the weight part isn't really an issue for me. I mean, I've went up a weight class each season, so luckily I'm okay in that department, but we'll go really hard at this beginning, and as we get closer and closer to nationals, we'll start to ease it back and make the practices a little bit easier, a little bit shorter. They're still going to be just as intense, but we won't spend as much time beating up on me.
When do you know exactly when you're planning to go up? Will you go up about the same time before this year's tournament as you did last year? What's the travel plan yet? Do you have that set?
I don't think it's set in stone yet. I'm not too sure. I would guess we'll head down 2 or 3 days before and get our testing out of the way, if I had to guess.
He is wrestling at 165 pounds, so if you want to follow him, if you're trying to look for him, because they've got so many different weight classes and brackets, look for him in the 165-pound bracket. How different of an experience will it be for you? Have you ever gone to nationals when it was, because last year you had Tyler Lawley. Have you ever gone when it's just been you?
No, because last year was Tyler Lawley,
and then the year
before it was Tyler Meese with me.
It was Tyler Meese, obviously. So how much of a different experience will that be to not have anybody else to kind of collaborate with? Obviously, you'll have coaches and coach there, but how different will that be for you to not have a teammate there to try to kind of experience it with?
It'll definitely be different, but I'll still stick to the same game plan no matter what. I mean, wrestling still is somewhat of that individual sport, and it comes back to self-responsibility and being able to take care of what you need to take care of. So that's what I plan on doing.
Final question: how do you take care of it and hang another banner in Fugate Gymnasium?
Just got to get out there and do what I do best, and just have fun with it. I can't stress too much, and I just need to let it fly.
We're looking forward to this. Kameron Frame at 165 pounds, making his 3rd straight NCAA national tournament, trying to get those All-American honors. Once again, it's March 12th and 13th for the NCAA Division II National Wrestling Tournament. Best of luck to you, and congratulations again on making nationals. And, if you bring back another banner, that would be the worst thing in the world.
Yep, I plan on it.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. That is our show today for the Jetcast. Be back next week. Once again, we post every Wednesday around 6 o'clock. And so until next time, Blake Cripps saying, go Jets.